What made you break into your best friend's house and call the police? Brian was at his friend's house when the electrical fire consumed his home, killing his parents and his little sister while they slept. The guilt was destroying him. 3 weeks later at grief counseling, he wandered into the recreation room and found Silent Hill 2 on the PlayStation. As I watched him play, his shoulders finally relaxed. This game gets it, he whispered, watching James traverse his own guilt-made hell. He understands the need to be punished. I bought him the collector's edition for Christmas, desperate to support anything that helped. Brian started playing Silent Hill 2 obsessively, using it as his escape from the crushing guilt. I'd sit with him during marathon sessions, bringing food when he forgot to eat. His grief counselor was actually relieved. Better than substances or self-harm, she told me. Brian would spend hours analyzing James's journey, taking notes about redemption and punishment. When he proposed doing community service as his own penance, everyone thought it was a breakthrough. He organized smoke detector installations, volunteered at burn units, led fire safety workshops at elementary schools. He'd work himself to exhaustion, but people admired his dedication. The fire chief personally thanked him, saying Brian had transformed tragedy into purpose. Even when Brian would mutter about accepting necessary punishment while working, volunteers just saw it as part of his healing process. I helped organize the workshops and watched him finally sleep through the night. For the first time since the fire, I believed he'd found his path forward. The morning our town woke to unusual fog, Brian called it a message. He started seeing patterns everywhere. Rust on buildings spelled warnings. Sirens meant specific sins were being punished. At community service, he began asking volunteers to confess what they need to atone for, making people uncomfortable, though most assumed it was just his way of processing. When people complained, Brian pushed harder, insisting pain purifies us, while working volunteers past exhaustion. He started showing up at fire scenes, grabbing firefighters, and insisting he understood what the fire was saying. After the third incident, the fire chief banned him from all emergency scenes. Brian accused him of being an agent of the order, suppressing the truth. That's when I noticed he'd been mapping our town, marking buildings with corruption levels, and drawing otherworld transitions. He'd stockpiled gas masks in his garage and started leaving Bible verses mixed with Silent Hill quotes on neighbors' doors. When I confronted him, he said coldly, "You've never lost anyone. You can't see what's coming." I called his therapist that night, but she said he'd stopped attending weeks ago. I tried organizing an intervention, but Brian heard about it and began avoiding me. The next week, I broke into his house and found his journal categorizing every townsperson as innocent or condemned. I photographed the pages and went to the police, but they couldn't act on weird writings. The dense October fog rolled in at 3 a.m. when Brian's call woke me. "It's here. The fog world is here. I have to save the innocent." His voice had this terrible calm that made my stomach drop. I immediately called 911 while dressing, but the dispatcher said they were already receiving multiple calls. I drove through fog so thick my headlights barely penetrated 5 feet ahead. The first sign of chaos was an abandoned car with its door hanging open, then another. By the time I reached Bryan's street, red and blue lights strobed through the mist like some nightmare disco. Parents stood in robes and pajamas, some screaming, others just staring in shock. A mother grabbed me. "He took my baby. That psycho took my baby." I pushed through the crowd and tried to get past the police line. "I know him. Let me talk to him." But they held me back as I watched him through the window, frantically nailing boards across the door. I screamed his name until my voice went hoarse. The truth came in fragments from hysterical parents. Brian had broken into 3 homes between 2 and 3 a.m., snatching children from their beds. 5 kids total, ages 4 to 9. He whispered to each child that their parents were already consumed by the fog, and only he could protect them from the monsters hunting innocent souls. An officer showed me photos from the basement. Brian had written numbers on the children's foreheads, purity ratings from 1 to 5. He'd forced them to draw the monsters chasing them with crayons, as proof they could see what he saw. An 8-year-old's arms were slashed from fighting as he dragged her through broken glass, her blood streaking the basement walls where she tried to climb out. When police breached the basement, Brian attacked with a baseball bat, shrieking, "You're letting them in! The children can see them! Look at their drawings!" He bit an officer's hand deep enough to require stitches, screaming about corruption spreading through blood. As 6 officers finally restrained him, Brian stared directly at me through the window and wailed, "She came to me in the fog! My sister! She told me which ones to save! These 5 have her pure soul!" I lunged forward, shouting, "Brian, I tried to help you!" But the officers pushed me back. The youngest child later told her parents that Brian kept calling her by his sister's name, stroking her hair and promising, "This time, I won't let the fire take you." Brian's institutionalized now, deemed incompetent to stand trial. The 5 families he terrorized remain in therapy, with the 8-year-old girl still checking window locks nightly. Every week, I receive his letters, pages of hand-drawn fog patterns, and lists of children he's identified as carriers of pure souls. I forward everything to the FBI task force I'm working with. His latest identified 47 kids across 3 counties. We've warned all families. The facility director says Brian still whispers, "The fog world is expanding." I was the only one who could see.